before we go to the other channel, the other side of the street, we got to address this because now apparently Uncle Dave is pissed at us again. And I don't even have all the details on this because I just found out right before we started to record this. I've had a busy day, but apparently, and I told you to look some stuff up and see if we can get to the bottom of this. He is offended that we have impugned the integrity of the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame when we made comments about Twinkle Toes McFingerbang being a first ballot Hall of Famer. Yes, Kenny Olivier was...
Well, he wasn't first ballot.
Well, the first time he was...
Third year on the ballot. What do they call
it when he's the first time? He's been on it before?
He's been on it apparently for a few years, yeah.
Okay, I thought this was his big debut, his big coming out party. He's one of these, what do they call him, a debutante. He's coming out. But he's been on the ballot for a couple of years, so some sanity has prevailed until this year. But anyway, we made fun of it because it's something to make fun of, because this guy is not a Hall of Fame wrestler by any stretch of the imagination for anybody that was a fan or affiliated with, in my mind, professional wrestling until about 15 or 20 years ago when everything went sideways, and we made fun of it. And I said, I know we've been talking about crooked elections. The one we just had for president, that was legitimate. Here's where the ballot stuffing went. Here's who did Dave mail ballots to that would Kenny Omega's immediate family, maybe his Girl Scout group that sells him Girl Scout cookies door to door. Who got these ballots that would vote for this idiot? And we made a lot of fun of it. And apparently Dave is upset. Did I summarize this situation correctly?
I think so. And because we heard about this and then you told me to look into it. And I heard Dave on his show talking about it at length. And then I saw various things that he posted on his board about it. And a few things on Twitter. I actually just responded before we started recording to one of them.
Well, what is his main bone of contention? Because if he's that upset that we've impugned the honor of his election, we understand from the cybersecurity people at Wrestling Observer newsletter that it was the most secure election they've ever had. But if I apologize for saying that he stuffed the ballot box, I guess just basically since he picks who he sends a ballot to, I guess it just worked out that his favorite wrestler made it in this year, I guess.
It appears there are several things in the segment we did on the drive-thru that bothered him. Now, the segment we did was on episode 166 this past Monday. It was approximately 11 minutes and 9 seconds in length.
Well, we're not going to play it. What's his main? We're not going to play the whole thing, but should we listen again to something we said? Is there some other thing that we've assaulted his senses on?
I did pull something because it relates to this. Again, there were several different things he said, and I think they're all worth addressing one at a time.
Well, let's try.
And let me just say, I like Dave. I don't have a problem with Dave. Obviously, it seems like he has a little bit of a problem with me because
I used to like Dave.
I know, but my point is me and you don't exactly, because we're friends, we don't feel the same way about everyone. I'm just trying to point out.
Well, because he hadn't been picking at you for the past 2 years, saying ridiculous, stupid things.
The first thing that bothered him was the idea that you would insinuate that he was packing the vote for people that would vote for Omega. Now, listening back to the clip as I did, you were joking. I thought it was pretty clear that you weren't being serious when you said, do you think Dave is sending more ballots out? I even said on that recording, I don't think he's doing that.
Well, and as a matter of fact, here's another thing. Apparently, old Dave has lost his sense of humor, except for when you're making fun of wrestling instead of making fun of wrestlers he likes. The only thing he finds funny is when you actually make fun of wrestling these days.
Another thing that Dave said in the midst of that, and this is a brief thing I'll address, but when complaining about the way we discussed the question, and again, we received somewhere over 100 emails and tweets.
That was
within
just
a day.
That was just to the drive-thru or whatever. My Twitter was lit up. What do you think about this? They've
Right.
gone crazy. This guy in the Hall of Fame, blah, blah, blah.
And every version of that, some people go too far, but every version is, what does Jim think of Kenny Omega going into the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame? One of Dave's things was this. I have to admit, I did find this funny. Why didn't they talk about El Medico? I have to be honest, not one email came in asking us to talk about Medico Assassino.
Well, no, besides that, I've never seen El Medico. I've seen a few film clips, but it's not like I studied El Medico's career. He died before I was born. He's from another country of which my history is not as good as it is of the United States, and that wasn't the topic that we were being asked about. But we should have talked about him instead of making fun of Dave's favorite wrestlers, what you're saying.
The other two things that seem to really bother him, and again, it bothered him. I mean, he basically said that you're a liar.
What did I lie about?
And at one point he said, I have no balls for not calling you out on it. And by the way, I've got balls, and they're big, and they're beautiful, and they're sponsored by Manscaped.
That's exactly right. All of our balls are taken care of.
But one of the other problems, I guess, because again, I listened back to the clip, was when you spoke about who voted for Omega, you said clearly none of the historians would have. And then later on in the clip, when
I said I find it, I believe, the way I remember it is I find it very hard to believe that either a serious historian or a retired wrestler would vote for this guy to be in the Hall of Fame, is what I said.
And later on in that conversation, I was talking about how I thought, and it goes into a discussion I had on my 605 shows, where I had voters from across the world, New Zealand, Japan, England, different provinces in Canada, and of course the United States, different voters discussing it, and the topic comes up over and over about the body that's actually doing the voting, and how intelligent they truly are towards whether it's wrestling history or what's actually happening in wrestling. And I brought up the idea that, although I'm not besmirching the man at all, it seems weird to me that Larry Madison came in first on the ballot amongst the other historians. And then I listed off some of the names that he came in above, being first. And one of the names I didn't list was Kenny Omega. And I have to be honest, I'll take the blame from Dave for this. I didn't notice his name as I was reading down the list of various people that I was just shooting off at you.
So he's mad because the historians actually did vote for Kenny Omega.
Well, no, he's mad that I didn't. Apparently,
and you did. Well, no, and you didn't bring it up.
Apparently, I was supposed to correct you when you said it earlier, which I hadn't noticed by that point in time. And then when I was going through the list,
so where did he come in the historians' listing?
Hold on, let me pull this up. Kenny Omega came in 8th amongst historians.
We don't know who the historians are.
No,
I mean, where they got their historian credibility.
Like
from.
I said, I just had a bunch of serious historians on 605.
Go ahead, finish.
There are a lot of serious wrestling historians out there who study this, who care about this. In one case, Al Getz, who's been on this show, literally on his own dime, travels around the country searching for results that no one else has, finds a way to apply them with analytics and a new way to do research. Everyone's a serious historian who was on the show. So there are serious historians out there.
Which ones of them voted for Kenny Olivier?
I don't know. I'll be honest.
Nobody would admit it. Sort of like a Trump voter.
Well, no.
People don't want to admit it in public.
I didn't know in advance, but the people who were on my show, Kurt Brown voted for Omega last year, but not this year. But no one else voted for Kenny Omega, including Fumi Saito, which that was actually a very interesting discussion people should check out. Just what a Japanese reporter, who a lot of people know and respect, what he thinks about Kenny Omega going in this year, because so much of it, he was on the Japanese ballot. So, I mean, really what we're evaluating for is his career in Japan, much more than anything else. And I think a lot of people can learn something from that conversation. There's a lot of interesting stuff there.
Wait a minute. Where did he place the other category that I mentioned? The retired wrestlers, people that might still have some respect for this industry. Where did he place there?
On historians, he's 8th. Reporters, he's 1st.
Well, we know who the reporters, who their scoutmaster is, so that's explicable.
Retired wrestlers or office, he is not listed, so I don't think I'm just trying to make sure. I don't want Dave to get mad at me again because I missed this. I don't see him on this list. active wrestlers in office, came in 7th.
Not on the retired wrestler list.
No.
I predictified that. I can't, like I said, I can't believe any retired wrestler that still probably has some respect for the business would indict this guy induct him into the Hall of Fame.
The other big thing that bothered Dave,
there's more. Dave's got more problems.
I have to admit, and I've defended Dave when you've gone overboard at times, and I've been,
I never go overboard.
I've been pretty vocal when I disagree with you on something or the way you handle something. Anyone who listens to the show knows that. But in this case, I don't know what the hell's wrong with Dave. He got mad, and I had to go back and check this, because when Chris Benoit, the vote to take him out of the Hall of Fame, he got into the Hall of Fame, and then there was a vote, I forget if it was a year or 2 years after he murdered his family, there was a vote whether or not to take him out of the Hall of Fame. It didn't pass. He stayed in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
He thought that I should have called you. I'm not even sure. He thought that you should have spoken up and said that you apparently wrote a letter to him at that time, whatever it was, 2007, 2008, vociferously defending Chris Benoit staying in the Hall of Fame.
Yes, I did. As a matter of fact, now that you mentioned that, I remember doing that because
I didn't know about that. I didn't know anything about that until you just.
Yeah, well, because my viewpoint was I don't believe that the Chris Benoit that we all knew personally as a friend or a coworker, and that all the fans looked up to as a great wrestler, should be stricken from history because the guy got a combination of brain damage and or mental illness through, whether it was through steroids or being whacked in the head umpteen times or whatever the fuck. Everybody who was close to the situation said that he turned into a completely different person, and that person didn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, but the person that got voted in did. Because it was, when someone even does something that heinous, but it's a product not of their right mind, but mental illness, does that mean that nothing they did in life before that was valid or was still as good because of something they did that wasn't them? I'm sorry, but he was brain damage. It's like if one of the service people that's blown up in fucking combat and gets brain damage and comes back and as a different person does things to themselves or other people as they sometimes do, does that mean that it's their fault? They didn't ask for that fucking brain damage. Chris Benoit took a lot of fucking blows to the brain and all kinds of shit. He didn't ask for brain damage, but he facilitated it. But I still don't believe he should be penalized for it. But anyway, that's what that was. But we didn't go into that.
No, we didn't.
Because we were fucking joking about Twinkle Toes McFingerbang getting elected into any wrestling Hall of Fame. We weren't going to take a 20-minute side trip down debating whether Chris Benoit is a horrible person or not.
Well, we'll talk about that in a second. I'll just say, I don't agree with you on this kind of topic. And I'll say this, if Benoit wasn't elected when he was, if Benoit was on the ballot 4 years later, he would never have gotten in because.
Oh, no, and I agree with that. Yeah. I agree with you there. Yes.
And I also think if that vote.
But because he was voted in, that shows that people judge just based on his contributions to wrestling that he should be in a Hall of Fame.
Well, here's another thing to think about, because this came up on my show.
Yeah, Donald Trump's in the WWE Hall of Fame. He ought to be taken out.
Let's not compare the Observer Hall of Fame to the WWE Hall of Fame.
I don't know if we're talking about either one of them, but go ahead.
If that vote to rescind Chris Benoit's election to the Hall of Fame happened now instead of then, I think he would absolutely be out.
Probably because more time has elapsed for people to tell the horrible story of what he did last rather than still being shocked because of all the people who knew him and loved him and respected him.
So again, Dave's whole thing, and there was a lot there. The Omega thing was the least of it. I just got a kick out of that because it was like literally every email was about Omega. And then we should have talked about
They didn't talk about El Medico.
Yeah. And by the way, everyone, look into El Medico Asesino, a fascinating career and a truly deserved Hall of Famer. But the big things that bothered him were you saying that he was stuffing the ballots to get Omega in. And again, I thought it was pretty clear that you were being a little silly there. I didn't take that seriously, like you were putting out a proposal that it really happened. Dave got very offended by that, whether it's because you went after the integrity of the Hall of Fame or whatever, I don't know. The other two things were that I didn't point out to you, and he's certain, from what I saw, he's certain that I knew Omega finished 8th on the historians list.
Well, because that's all you did beforehand was look to see where he placed in every list, because that's all you cared about.
I hadn't noticed, and I missed it when I was reading off the names. So if I get blamed for that, I will gladly take the blame. But the other big thing was that when the Benoit thing came up, you had an opportunity. When I said that I thought he should be out, you had the opportunity right there to jump in and say you defended it. Now, I want to play this audio.
Well, it is, I mentioned, and go off a 20-minute different discussion when we were jacking around about some goof getting elected in the Wrestling Hall of Fame.
So after I heard that from Dave, I said, I got to go back and listen to this clip. I don't remember being anything that would get him this offended.
Inflammatory. Was it inflammatory?
I don't think so, quite frankly. And very often I end up defending his side on things on these clips. So I went back and listened. And again, the clip's 11 minutes and 9 seconds. And we record a lot, and I record a lot. So I don't remember every specific thing, but I was waiting for the Benoit talk. Like, okay, where is this missed moment where we could have had this deep talk about Chris Benoit? I found approximately where it is. This is the end of the clip. Again, the clip is 11 minutes, 9 seconds. This is 9 minutes and 47 seconds into the clip. So less than a minute and a half left. I'm going to play this, and we'll talk about it on the other side, but this apparently is the missed moment where we could have had this big reveal that you wrote this letter about Chris Benoit. Hold on, here's the audio.
But I refuse to believe that any serious, credible wrestling historian or any serious, credible retired wrestler, because you'd have to be near 50 at least by that point, would not be offended by this guy's whole presentation, pretty much. So that's just me.
And again, I look at it from the other way. Good or bad, he's in the middle of his career. You can't look at his entire body of work right now because we're really just looking at a very short period of time where he was elevated to main events in New Japan from that point forward. I don't think there should be people on the ballot while they're actively working. And I get it, no one retires. Jack Briscoe retired. I mean, no one retires. But I think,
and hey, if they've elected him now, what happens if he gets caught with Riho playing with his Sega?
Oh, will you stop it?
and then there's a big scandal, and then they've got to have a special recall to see whether he's voted out of it or not.
I'm going to guess they're not going to catch him with Riho playing their Sega or whatever that connotation is supposed to really mean. But secondly, hey, look, the Observer Hall of Fame voters didn't vote Chris Benoit out when they had that option.
Well, I've still got faith in Omega.
And that was it. Approximately.
That was it?
The last 30 seconds, 25 seconds of that clip were the talk about a potential recall vote. In the midst of the joking around about Kenny and Riho causing a recall vote. Apparently at that moment, that was the opportunity you had to let me know that you actually, at the time, thought Chris Benoit should have stayed in. I couldn't believe, when I went back and listened, I said, that was it? What the hell? And it just made me, it made me realize, and bear with me for a second, you may not agree to everything I say, but you and Dave have a lot in common. There are big differences. There are big differences, but you guys have a lot in common. And both of you guys have a problem when someone has a different wrestling worldview than you. You both
not when it makes any sense.
You guys both, in different ways, in very, very different ways, will let people know when they have a very different point of view than what you have, what you think of them. But the other thing is, Omega.
But wait a minute, but Dave used to have a very different opinion, apparently, of wrestling because he used to take the piss out of all the same shit that we took the piss out of. But at least I'm consistent. He changes his shit.
And the other thing is, you guys were always friends. And I personally don't like the fact that your relationship got to this point. And I think both sides have done things wrong. And I think for anyone who just says it's just Jim Cornette, you haven't been paying attention. Dave absolutely went out of his way to needle you over and over and over again. He
wouldn't leave it alone. And it was constant, and it was always about these three clowns, the two brothers, Pieface and Balding, and Twinkle Toes. And it's not like I'm the Lone Ranger with this opinion. You see Twitter, you see the internet, you see the massive amounts of people who do not watch their program. They all think it's a big fucking joke. And they think these guys are a big joke because these guys present themselves as a big joke. And why Dave, at the expense of his credibility with everybody he's known for 40 years, has to run down this road with Twinkle Toes and the Sugar Hill Gang, I have no fucking clue.
And that's what it comes down to. I mean, even more than the Bucks. In this situation, it's purely Omega. I don't know if Dave would have this problem if it was anyone other than Omega that you were talking about here.
And
you wouldn't have this problem if it was anyone other than Omega here.
He didn't even name one of his moves after Dave, like the Goofies did. The middle-aged Bucks. They did everything to get those stars.
And the only other thing I'll say is, and anyone can go check out the clip. It's on YouTube. Jim Cornette on Kenny Omega being voted into the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame.
And see if it's inflammatory.
But you can't get mad if someone doesn't talk about what you want them to talk about and say what you want them to say.
Or didn't even bother we didn't even think about bothering to talk about what he was thinking we should talk about.
Until he brought up that issue, I was surprised when he brought the thing up. I was like, what's he talking about? When did we talk about Benoit? And it was me that brought it up in the last 25 seconds of the clip, while you were in the middle of your joke about Kenny and Rio. But we don't get to decide what other people should talk about. And I mean, that's the part that kind of got me, like when Dave writes stuff in the Observer, there are times he leaves stuff out. Should I get mad about it? When he did the Rocky Johnson bio, I didn't see anything in there about Rocky getting busted for rape or Rocky getting busted for asking a 14-year-old girl to play strip poker with him, or Rocky cheating people out of money all over the world, or Rocky screwing Scott Teal, or Rocky getting in trouble in OVW for his behavior with women. None of this was in that bio. Should I just say, okay, he didn't think it was important to put it in there, or should I be like, how dare he not put it in there? And that's on my mind.
Just an example off the top of your head.
Well, it is, because we just did the Observer Hall of Fame specials at 6:05, and that was one of the topics, is how do you address a wrestler's outside of the ring issues? Rocky Johnson finished really well on the ballot, all things considered. And I said, I can't vote for Rocky Johnson. He's disqualified to me. Rape and murder. Those are two things disqualify you from me voting for you.
By the way, that's why I never voted for Jimmy Snuka and told Dave that, because we already knew what happened there and I just couldn't see it. And it wasn't like it was a sudden thing, totally uncharacteristic and boom, flamed out. It was an ongoing pattern of things. So, but that wasn't applicable to the discussion we were having about Twinkle Toes either, which is why we didn't talk about it. Poor Uncle Dave. You think he needs a dog?
No,
if he bought a dog and named it Clue, then he'd have one.
I mean, again, I like Dave. I don't, obviously he's not very happy with me because of my involvement with this clip. From what I heard him say and from what I read that he said, I think he went a little bit overboard and he made it a lot more dramatic than it was. I mean, go listen to the clip. Go listen to the clip. He's mad that I didn't bring up that Omega finished 8th on the list. I think it was 8th. Was it 8th? It was 8th. 8th on the list of historians, which I'll take the blame for. I missed that. I'll take the blame.
Shame upon you.
I didn't know that was a reason to get ripped. And we didn't talk about the Benoit thing. And your joke about stuffing the ballots went over his head, or he got very sensitive to it. And I understand. Look, it's his Hall of Fame. At the end of the day, it's his Hall of Fame. He picked the first class. He picks who votes on it. He picks who gets on the ballot. He manages it. It represents him in his newsletter. I understand.
And his favorite wrestler got in.
And I understand being sensitive to any criticism for it, or criticism of it, I should say. But Go listen to that clip. I mean, the way he reacted to that, I got to say, that's
all right.
ridiculous.
Calm down now.
Ridiculous.
Easy boy. Easy boy. You know, the shame of it all, according to Uncle Dave, you have no balls. According to Jerichovid, I have no soul. We're just a couple of soulless, ballless motherfuckers.
Yeah,
here.
call out Jericho. He keeps referring to you as being like Trump. That's what made me write to him earlier. I said, it's ridiculous you saying that he's like Trump when you email him about how much you love his political commentaries and thanking him for it. He calls you like Trump. Call out Jericho. Call out Jericho.
By the way, wouldn't you know who won the pony? One of those Dakotas is now the center of the universe for COVID.
Yeah, the one that had the motorcycle rally that Chris Jericho's band played at. Call out Jericho for donating more money to Trump than he did to Jim Valley.
Whoa!
Call out Jericho. Call out the Young Bucks. Are they birthers?
Well, you know the answer to that question.
You don't get to decide. I mean, that's the thing that got me. It was just, he got so offended that we didn't talk about exactly what he wanted us to talk about, the way he wanted us to talk about it. And I don't know. I don't want to get too worked up, but everyone can play that game. Everyone can point the finger.
Left the barn, cowboy.
Everyone can point the finger and say, you didn't talk about this. Why didn't you talk about this? Why didn't you talk about this? I mean, just, it's silly. But call out Jericho. Instead of calling Jim Trump, saying he's like Trump, and in doing that, you're acting like Trump, actually, all things considered.
Yes, he is.
But instead of doing that, call out Jericho. He actually supports Trump. He actually wrote All Lives Matter. He's your buddy. Call him out. I'll wait.
I bet you he won't. You want to take that bet?
Aha! I see where you're going. I'm trying to, in my head, picture, where was he trying to transition to before that we got here now?
In your divine and borderline mystical way, you have discovered that I'm telling everybody that if you want to bet on the exact moment when Uncle Dave's brains turn to jelly and we take him over to the home and he's sipping soup through a straw, folks, go to my bookie because they'll take a bet on anything. Whether it's late fall college ball, the NBA bubble, UFC Fight Island, Turkey Day's right around the corner. You can feast on some NFL action, odds boosts, lightning deals, free bets all season long. Whether you're a first-timer or you've been playing with my bookie for years, there's no shortage of value to be found in the thousands of game lines, unique prop bets, and contests that they come up with every single week. I'll tell you, folks, right now you can sign up or get reloaded. I always like that term, get reloaded. I was loaded once, and then I got reloaded. You can make your bet and get paid. They've even got a full-fledged casino platform with all the classic table, slot, and card games. And the best part is, at MyBookie, the doors never close, and you don't have some old woman from Topeka with a cigarette hanging off of her lip sitting there next to you either, having a look at that wart with a hair sticking out of it, and all you can think of is mole, 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 mole. That's what that woman looks like, and the smell of cheap perfume turns your stomach. But not with MyBookie, because you're in your own home. Make the right play and sign up today at MyBookie, and when you do, use promo code JCE to get your deposit matched halfway all the way up to $1,000. You put in $200, they give you an extra $100. You put in $400, they give you an extra $2. You see where this is going. Free betting money. That's right. We give away free money here on the program. It's winning season at MyBookie. Come join the fun and win some cash while you're at it with promo code JCE. I bet you.
That's right.
What the hell are you doing this week? And then let's introduce this brand new theme song we've got, which maybe Uncle Dave hadn't heard this yet. We just apologized to him for accusing him of stuffing the ballot box and packing the election. But when he said, here's this new song we've got coming up.
And let me just say, I don't think he did. I think, and this issue came up on my show.
I think he just naturally associates with a bunch of people that think that Twinkle Toes McFingerbang ought to be in a Hall of Fame.
It's not, see, again, it's not who he associates with, it's who gets a ballot and how they think about things and what they see the world as being. I just did a show, and that was one of the big topics and it wasn't even about Omega in this sense, but who's getting a ballot that so many clear-cut, should have been in the first-class Hall of Famers don't get the consideration that some of these other guys get. But anyway, another action-packed week on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network. Get information about all shows on Twitter at Superpodcasts or on Facebook, Facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. A few news and notes. Want to remind everyone to follow the Wrestling News Archive on Twitter at Wrestling News AV or on Facebook, Facebook.com/Wrestling News AV for Arcadian Vanguard. We are posting various things from the archives of Wrestling News, which incorporates Wrestling Review, Wrestling Monthly, Ring Wrestling, of course, Wrestling News, and every single program for the AWA, the WWF, Mid-South Wrestling, Southwest Wrestling. So many more promotions I'm running out.
You're running out of them.
That's right. Los Angeles Wrestling, and much more, including all the Norm Keitzer correspondents. We're posting various things. Check it out. Every day cool stuff goes up. That's Wrestling News AV on Twitter. Also want to make mention of the latest episode of Breaking Kayfabe with Baldwin and Barry. The boys talk with Olympic strongman Ken Patera. Check it out today at baldwinpod.com. Available wherever you find your favorite podcast. Also want to remind everyone, John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight then and now on Patreon at patreon.com/Arezzi. You get access to the full, complete episodes of every episode we review. If you're a classic wrestling fan and you enjoy wrestling from 30 years ago, this is a chance to hear more than what we review on the show. You get to hear all the original phone calls, all the original commercials, and all of the original wrestling news as it happened from WCW, or at that point, the NWA still. The NWA hadn't said, stop calling yourselves the NWA yet. The WWF, and so much more, including Herb Abrams' UWF, patreon.com/Arezzi. And of course, the 605 Superpodcast, The Mothership!
Put me through to the Pentagon!
Yeah.
That's a new one. You'd never played that one before.
It's the last button.
You've had that there the whole time? You've never played it?
I've had it there the whole time. I never thought to hit it.
Well, the latest 2 episodes are up right now. Our 2-part look at the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame. Who was on the ballot? Who got in? What do we think about the future? Well, will you calm down for a second? No snide remarks here. But a serious talk of wrestling history. If you are a nerd for wrestling history, these 2 episodes will be for you. Roundtable panel discussions with voters from across the world, including Fumi Saito in Japan, Steve Ogilvie in New Zealand, Alan Blackstock in England. We got voters from Canada. We got voters from all across America. This is fun for anyone who loves hearing some classic wrestling talk and is curious about the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame. Check it out today at 605pod.com. Available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. The Mothership!
Yeah.
You think we're going to get ballots next year?
I have a feeling not. Because I didn't send mine in anyway.
I sent mine in.
Because he can piss up a rope.
He may be mad at me.